The Fearless Mind: How Ordinary People Become Extraordinary, written and published by Rising Audiobook. Introduction. What if the biggest obstacle standing between you and the life you want isn't a lack of talent, intelligence, or opportunity? What if it's something far more subtle, something that has been quietly shaping your decisions for years without you even realizing it? That obstacle is fear, not the obvious kind that warns you of danger, but the hidden fear that disguises itself as logic, caution, perfectionism, and the belief that you should wait for the right time. It is the voice that tells you to play it safe, stay comfortable, and avoid risks. And while it may seem like it is protecting you, it is often preventing you from becoming the person you were meant to be. The truth is that extraordinary people are not born fearless. They feel fear just like everyone else. They experience uncertainty, self-doubt, and setbacks. The difference is that they refuse to let fear make their decisions. They act anyway. Every great achievement, every remarkable success, and every life-changing breakthrough began with a simple choice: courage over comfort. In this audiobook, you will discover how fear operates, how it limits your potential, and most importantly, how to overcome it. By the end, you will understand how to rewire your thinking, strengthen your confidence, and unlock the fearless version of yourself that has been waiting to emerge all along. Your extraordinary life begins now. Chapter 1. The Hidden Cost of Fear. Imagine reaching the final years of your life and being given the chance to look back at every opportunity that ever crossed your path. Not just the choices you made, but also the choices you avoided, the conversations you never started, the dreams you never pursued, the risks you never took, the moments when life quietly invited you forward and you stepped back instead. What would you see? For most people, the greatest pain would not come from failure. It would come from possibility, the haunting realization of what might have been. Fear has a strange way of operating in our lives. Most of the time, it does not arrive loudly. It does not announce itself as fear. Instead, it wears disguises. It calls itself being realistic. It pretends to be caution. It whispers that you should wait until you know more, until you feel ready, until conditions are perfect. It convinces you that hesitation is wisdom, and because its voice sounds reasonable, we listen. The hidden cost of fear is not always visible in the moment. In fact, that is what makes it so dangerous. If fear caused immediate pain, most people would confront it. But fear often charges its price slowly, collecting payments over months, years, and sometimes entire lifetimes. A person stays in a job they dislike because leaving feels uncertain. A talented artist never shares their work because criticism feels too painful. Someone remains silent about their feelings because rejection seems unbearable. Another delays pursuing a dream because they are waiting for confidence to arrive first. From the outside, these choices may appear harmless. Life continues. The days pass. Responsibilities are handled. Everything seems normal, but beneath the surface, something valuable is being lost. Potential. Every time fear makes a decision on your behalf, a small piece of your future disappears. Not because you lack ability, but because possibility was never given a chance to become reality. Consider the story of a talented employee named Sarah. For years, she consistently exceeded expectations at work. Her colleagues respected her. Her managers praised her performance. When a leadership position became available, many people assumed she would apply. But Sarah didn't. She told herself she wasn't ready yet. She convinced herself that someone else was more qualified. She worried about being rejected and embarrassed, so she stayed where she was. The position went to someone else. Months turned into years. Eventually, Sarah watched less capable people move ahead while she remained in the same role. Looking back, she realized something painful. The opportunity had not passed because she lacked talent. It had passed because fear had quietly made the decision for her. This happens more often than most people realize. Fear influences careers, relationships, finances, health, and personal growth. It prevents people from asking important questions, starting businesses, pursuing education, setting boundaries, and embracing change. It convinces them that safety is always the best option. Yet what many fail to understand is that safety has its own risks. There is a risk in staying where you are, a risk in remaining silent, a risk in never testing your potential, a risk in allowing fear to become the architect of your future. One of life's greatest paradoxes is that the things we fear most are often far less painful than the regret of avoiding them. Failure hurts, rejection hurts, disappointment hurts. But regret has a unique weight because it lingers. It follows people for years, asking questions that can never be answered. What if I had tried? What if I had spoken up? What if I had believed in myself just a little more? These questions become heavier with time. The extraordinary people we admire are not individuals who never felt fear. They are people who recognized fear's presence and refused to surrender their future to it. They understood that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the decision that something else matters more. The truth is that fear will always offer you a smaller life. It will always encourage caution over growth, comfort over possibility, and certainty over discovery. Left unchecked, it slowly shrinks your world until your dreams fit neatly inside your comfort zone. But your life was never meant to be defined by what frightens you. Every extraordinary journey begins with a simple realization: fear is a terrible decision maker. The moment you stop allowing fear to choose your path is the moment you begin reclaiming your future. And that future may be far greater than anything fear has ever allowed you to imagine. Chapter 2. Understanding the Fearless Mind. Think about the people you admire most. The entrepreneur who risked everything to start a company. The athlete who performed under immense pressure. The leader who made difficult decisions when others hesitated. The person who walked away from a comfortable life to pursue a dream that seemed impossible. When you look at their achievements, it is easy to assume they possessed something rare, something that ordinary people do not have. It is tempting to believe they were born fearless. But if you could step inside their minds during those defining moments, you would discover a surprising truth. Their hearts raced, their doubts appeared, their fears whispered warnings. They worried about failure, rejection, embarrassment, and uncertainty just like everyone else. The difference was never the absence of fear. The difference was their relationship with it. One of the most damaging myths in personal growth is the belief that fearless people do not feel fear. This misunderstanding causes countless people to wait for a state that will never arrive. They tell themselves they will take action when they feel confident enough. They will start the business when fear disappears. They will speak up when anxiety fades. They will pursue their dream when uncertainty no longer exists. But fearlessness is not a destination where fear suddenly vanishes. It is a way of responding when fear appears. Imagine standing at the edge of a diving board high above a swimming pool. Your mind immediately begins generating possibilities. What if I fall awkwardly? What if I embarrass myself? What if something goes wrong? These thoughts emerge automatically. You do not consciously choose them. The brain is designed to identify potential threats because, throughout human history, survival depended on noticing danger. In many ways, fear is simply the brain trying to protect you. The problem is that the modern world is very different from the world our ancestors lived in. Today, the greatest opportunities often require stepping into uncertainty, starting a business, changing careers, asking someone out, speaking in public, sharing creative work, moving to a new city, or pursuing a meaningful goal all involve risk. The same protective system that once helped humans survive can sometimes prevent them from truly living. Fearless people understand something that others often miss. They recognize that fear is information, not instruction. Just because your mind generates fearful thoughts does not mean you must obey them. This realization changes everything. Most people treat fear like a stop sign. The moment they feel uncomfortable, they assume they should turn back. Fearless people treat fear differently. They see it as a signal that they are approaching something important. Instead of asking, "How do I avoid this feeling?" they ask, "What is this feeling trying to teach me?" This shift in perspective transforms challenges completely. Where one person sees an opportunity for humiliation, another sees an opportunity for growth. Where one person sees uncertainty, another sees possibility. Where one person sees potential failure, another sees valuable experience. The situation may be identical, but the interpretation is different. Consider two individuals preparing for the same important presentation. Both feel nervous, both experience self-doubt, both worry about making mistakes. Yet one views those emotions as evidence that they are not ready, while the other sees them as a natural response to doing something meaningful. One retreats, the other moves forward. The difference is not courage versus fear. The difference is how they understand fear. What makes this especially powerful is that the brain is not fixed. It can be trained. Every time you face a challenge, instead of avoiding it, you teach your brain a new lesson. You show it that discomfort is survivable. You demonstrate that uncertainty does not always lead to disaster. You provide evidence that growth often exists on the other side of fear. Over time, the brain begins updating its expectations. The situations that once seemed terrifying gradually become familiar. The conversation you were afraid to have becomes easier. The risks that once felt overwhelming become manageable. The challenges that once triggered panic become opportunities for growth. This process is not instant. It happens through repetition. Confidence is not something you magically acquire before taking action. Confidence is something you build by repeatedly proving to yourself that you can handle discomfort. Many people spend years trying to eliminate fear from their lives. They search for perfect certainty, complete confidence, and guarantees of success. But life offers none of those things. The pursuit of certainty often becomes another form of fear. The truly fearless mind does not demand guarantees. It accepts uncertainty as part of the journey. It understands that courage and fear can walk side by side. It recognizes that meaningful goals will almost always involve risk. It chooses growth over comfort, not because growth feels easier, but because the cost of remaining the same eventually becomes greater. The people who achieve extraordinary things are not fearless because they never experience doubt. They are fearless because they have learned that fear does not deserve control over their future. When fear speaks, they listen, but they do not automatically obey. And perhaps that is the most important lesson of all. The goal is not to become a person who never feels afraid. The goal is to become a person whose dreams are stronger than their fears, whose actions are bigger than their doubts, and whose vision for the future is powerful enough to keep moving forward even when uncertainty remains. That is the true nature of a fearless mind. Chapter 3. Breaking the Chains of Self-Doubt. There is a conversation happening inside your mind right now. It has probably been there for years. Sometimes it speaks loudly, and sometimes it whispers so softly that you barely notice it. Yet its influence reaches into almost every area of your life. It is the voice that asks, "Who do you think you are?" It appears when you consider pursuing a bigger goal. It surfaces when you are about to step outside your comfort zone. It shows up when an opportunity presents itself and demands that you become more than you have been before. You may know this voice by another name, self-doubt. For many people, self-doubt feels so natural that they assume it is simply part of who they are. They believe they were born less confident than others. They imagine that successful people possess some internal certainty that they themselves lack. But self-doubt is rarely something we are born with. More often, it is something we learn. A child does not enter the world questioning their worth. They do not hesitate to take their first steps because they fear looking foolish. They do not refuse to speak because they might make a mistake. They try, fail, fall, and try again. Growth is natural because judgment has not yet taken root. Over time, however, experiences begin to shape beliefs. A harsh criticism, a painful rejection, a comparison to someone else, a failure that feels personal. Little by little, conclusions form inside the mind. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe people like me don't succeed. The dangerous thing about these beliefs is that they often go unquestioned. Instead of seeing them as opinions formed from past experiences, we begin treating them as facts. And once a belief becomes accepted as truth, it starts creating invisible boundaries around our lives. Many people spend years living inside limits that do not actually exist. A talented writer never shares their work because they assume nobody will care. A capable professional avoids leadership opportunities because they believe others are more qualified. A person with extraordinary potential settles for a smaller life because they have convinced themselves they are not capable of more. The tragedy is not that they lack ability. The tragedy is that they never give themselves the opportunity to discover what they are capable of. One of the most common forms of self-doubt is something psychologists often call imposter syndrome. It is the feeling that you do not belong, that your success is somehow accidental, and that sooner or later everyone will discover you are not as capable as they think. What makes this phenomenon so fascinating is that it affects people at every level of success. Successful entrepreneurs experience it. Award-winning artists experience it. Executives, athletes, authors and performers experience it. Even individuals admired by millions often struggle with private doubts about their abilities. This reveals an important truth. Self-doubt is not evidence of inadequacy. It is often evidence that you are growing. When you enter unfamiliar territory, uncertainty is natural. The problem begins when uncertainty convinces you to stop moving forward. Consider the story of a young entrepreneur named Daniel. For years he dreamed of starting his own business. He spent countless hours reading books, watching videos, and researching successful companies. Yet every time he considered taking the first real step, the same thoughts appeared. I'm not experienced enough. I don't know enough. What if I fail? So he waited. Months passed, then years. Eventually, Daniel realized something important. No amount of preparation was making him feel ready. The confidence he was waiting for never arrived. Finally, he decided to take a small step. He launched a simple version of his business. It wasn't perfect. He made mistakes. He encountered challenges. But something unexpected happened. He learned. Then he improved. Then he learned some more. With every action, his confidence grew, not because his doubts disappeared, but because reality began replacing assumptions. The lesson was profound. Competence comes through practice, not before it. Many people believe confidence leads to action. In reality, action often leads to confidence. Confidence is not built by thinking about what you might accomplish. It is built by gathering evidence that you can handle challenges. Every small promise you keep to yourself becomes proof. Every obstacle you overcome becomes proof. Every fear you face becomes proof. Gradually, the voice of self-doubt loses its authority, not because it vanishes completely, but because another voice grows stronger. The voice of experience. The voice that says, I've handled difficult things before. The voice that says, I can learn. The voice that says, I don't need to be perfect to begin. Breaking the chains of self-doubt does not happen in a single moment. It happens through hundreds of small acts of courage. It happens every time you choose action over hesitation, growth over comfort, and possibility over fear. The extraordinary people you admire are not free from doubt. They simply refuse to let doubt have the final word, and neither should you. Because on the other side of self-doubt is a version of yourself that has been waiting patiently for permission to emerge, a stronger, wiser, and more capable person than you have ever allowed yourself to believe. Chapter 4. The Courage to Take Action. Picture a person standing at the edge of a cold swimming pool. They know they want to get in. They have brought the right equipment. They have prepared themselves mentally. They have spent time thinking about it, planning for it, and imagining what it will feel like. Yet they continue standing at the edge, waiting for the perfect moment. A few minutes pass, then a few more. Eventually, they realize something important. The water is not going to feel warmer because they keep thinking about it. Life works the same way. There comes a point when preparation stops being productive and starts becoming a form of avoidance. There comes a point when thinking, planning, researching and waiting become comfortable substitutes for action. And for many people, that point arrives much sooner than they realize. One of the greatest misconceptions about success is the belief that action follows confidence. People assume that extraordinary individuals wake up one day feeling completely ready. They imagine that confidence arrives first, and action naturally follows. But reality tells a different story. Confidence is often the result of action, not the cause of it. Most people spend years waiting for a feeling that never comes. They wait until they feel brave enough, knowledgeable enough, talented enough, or certain enough. They tell themselves they will start when the timing is right. They will take the risk when their fears disappear. They will pursue the opportunity when they finally feel prepared. Yet readiness is one of life's greatest illusions. No one feels fully prepared for the moments that change their life. The entrepreneur launching their first business feels uncertainty. The author publishing their first book feels doubt. The athlete entering a major competition feels nervous. The parent raising a child feels unprepared. The leader stepping into a new role feels pressure. Growth has always required stepping into situations before certainty arrives. If people only acted when they felt completely ready, very little would ever happen. Fear often convinces us that we need more time, more preparation, more confidence, more guarantees. But underneath those excuses is usually a deeper desire. The desire to avoid discomfort. The human mind loves certainty because certainty feels safe. Action, on the other hand, introduces risk. It creates the possibility of failure, rejection, criticism, and disappointment. Because of this, thinking often feels easier than doing. The problem is that thinking alone rarely changes a life. You cannot think your way into confidence. You cannot plan your way into courage. You cannot imagine your way into experience. At some point, action becomes necessary, and that is where transformation begins. Consider someone who dreams of becoming a public speaker. They admire great communicators and imagine themselves standing confidently in front of an audience. Yet every time an opportunity arises, they hesitate. What if I forget my words? What if people judge me? What if I embarrass myself? So they wait. Months pass, then years. The dream remains alive, but it never becomes reality because fear continues to postpone action. Now imagine that same person choosing a different path. Instead of waiting to feel confident enough to speak in front of hundreds of people, they start by speaking in front of 5. Their voice shakes, their hands tremble, they make mistakes, but they survive. Then they do it again and again. With every small experience, something changes. Their confidence begins to grow, not because fear disappears, but because evidence begins replacing imagination. They no longer wonder whether they can handle the challenge. They know they can, because they have done it before. This is how confidence is built, not through endless preparation, through repeated action. Small actions may seem insignificant in the moment, but they possess extraordinary power. A single conversation can lead to a new opportunity. One application can change a career. One decision can alter the direction of an entire life. The problem is that people often underestimate small beginnings because they are focused on dramatic results. They want immediate transformation. They want certainty before effort. They want perfection before progress. But extraordinary people understand something different. They understand that greatness is rarely created through one massive leap. More often, it is built through countless small steps taken consistently over time. Every meaningful accomplishment begins as something small. Every expert was once a beginner. Every confident person was once uncertain. Every success story started with someone choosing action before they felt ready. This is how momentum works. The first step is usually the hardest, because it requires overcoming inertia. But once movement begins, future steps become easier. Progress creates energy. Action creates clarity. Momentum creates belief. The person who takes action learns lessons that the person who only thinks never discovers. They gain experience. They develop resilience. They uncover strengths they did not know they possessed. Most importantly, they prove to themselves that they are capable of growth. Perfection, on the other hand, is a trap. It convinces people that they need flawless conditions before they begin. It encourages endless refinement, endless planning, and endless delay. But perfection is not what changes lives. Progress does. The extraordinary individuals we admire are not people who always got things right. They are people who were willing to move forward while things were still imperfect. They understood that mistakes are part of the process, not evidence of failure. The courage to take action is not about eliminating fear. It is about deciding that movement matters more than hesitation. It is about recognizing that the life you want will never be built inside your imagination alone. At some point, you must step forward. You must send the application, make the call, share the idea, take the risk, begin before you feel ready, because the future does not belong to those who wait for confidence. It belongs to those who create confidence through action. Chapter 5. Escaping the Comfort Zone. There is a quiet tragedy that unfolds in many lives. It does not happen all at once. There is no dramatic moment, no obvious warning sign. Instead, it happens slowly, almost invisibly. A person chooses what feels comfortable today, then they do it again tomorrow, and the next day. Over time, comfort becomes a habit, and eventually that habit becomes a cage. From the outside, everything appears fine. Life feels predictable. Risks are avoided. Challenges are minimized. There is a sense of safety in knowing what tomorrow will look like. Yet beneath that safety often lies something deeper, a growing feeling that life could be more than this. Most people have experienced that feeling. It appears during quiet moments. It surfaces when they see someone pursuing a dream, taking a risk, or creating a life that seems larger than their own. A voice inside whispers that there is more potential waiting to be explored, but another voice immediately responds with reasons to stay where they are. It's too risky. What if it doesn't work out? What if I fail? What if I lose what I already have? These questions feel logical because the human brain is designed to prioritize safety. For thousands of years, survival depended on avoiding danger and staying close to what was familiar. The unknown represented potential threats. As a result, our minds developed a natural preference for certainty. The problem is that the modern world often rewards the exact opposite. Growth rarely happens inside familiar territory. New skills require making mistakes. New opportunities require uncertainty. New relationships require vulnerability. Every meaningful transformation asks us to step beyond what feels comfortable and enter what feels unfamiliar. That is why growth and comfort rarely coexist. The comfort zone is not necessarily a bad place. It provides stability, rest, and recovery. The problem arises when comfort becomes a permanent residence rather than a temporary stop. When people spend too much time there, they stop challenging themselves. They stop expanding their capabilities. They stop discovering who they could become. Life begins to shrink. The same routines repeat. The same fears remain unchallenged. The same limitations continue defining what feels possible. And perhaps the most dangerous part is that comfort can feel like progress when it is actually stagnation. A person may tell themselves they are waiting for the perfect opportunity. In reality, they may be protecting themselves from discomfort. They may convince themselves they are being careful when they are actually being afraid. The extraordinary people we admire understand something different. They understand that discomfort is often not a signal of danger. It is a signal of growth. Think back to a time when you learned something new. Perhaps it was driving a car, speaking in front of a group, starting a new job, or learning a new skill. In the beginning, it probably felt awkward and uncomfortable. You made mistakes. You felt uncertain. You questioned yourself. But that discomfort was not evidence that you were incapable. It was evidence that you were expanding. Everything that eventually becomes comfortable begins as uncomfortable. Confidence begins as uncertainty. Strength begins as struggle. Mastery begins as incompetence. The path to growth has never been smooth because growth requires becoming someone you have never been before. Consider a person who decides to move to a new city in search of better opportunities. The decision is exciting, but it is also frightening. Suddenly, everything familiar is gone. The streets are unfamiliar, the routines disappear, friends and family may be far away. There are moments of loneliness, doubt and uncertainty. In those moments, returning home may seem tempting. Yet something remarkable often happens during experiences like these. The challenges force growth. The individual learns how to solve problems independently. They become more adaptable. They develop resilience they never knew they possessed. They gain confidence not because life became easier, but because they proved they could handle difficult situations. Years later, they often look back and realize that the experience that once felt uncomfortable became one of the most valuable chapters of their life. This is the hidden gift of stepping beyond the comfort zone. It reveals strengths that comfort could never uncover. Calculated risks play a vital role in this process. Escaping the comfort zone does not mean acting recklessly or ignoring consequences. It means making thoughtful decisions that stretch your abilities and expand your perspective. There is a difference between unnecessary danger and purposeful challenge. Purposeful challenges help you grow. They teach lessons that cannot be learned through observation alone. They expose hidden capabilities. They create experiences that build wisdom, resilience, and confidence. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you send a powerful message to yourself. You prove that fear does not control your decisions. You demonstrate that uncertainty is survivable. You show yourself that your potential is larger than your current circumstances. The comfort zone will always be inviting. It will always offer familiarity, predictability, and temporary relief from discomfort. But it can never offer transformation. Transformation exists just beyond its boundaries. The life you want, the person you hope to become, and the opportunities you dream about are rarely found in places where nothing challenges you. They are discovered when you have the courage to step into uncertainty and trust that growth is waiting there. The extraordinary life is not built by staying where it feels safe. It is built by repeatedly choosing expansion over limitation, possibility over familiarity, and growth over comfort. And every time you take that step, no matter how small, your world becomes a little larger than it was before. Chapter 6. Turning failure into fuel. If you could erase every failure from your past, would you? At first the answer might seem obvious. Who would willingly keep the painful memories? The rejection letter that shattered your confidence? The opportunity that slipped away? The project that collapsed after months of effort? The relationship that ended despite your best intentions? The moments when you gave everything you had and still came up short? Failure hurts because it forces us to confront a reality we did not want. It exposes our weaknesses, challenges our assumptions, and tests our belief in ourselves. In those moments, it can feel deeply personal, as if the outcome is not merely a reflection of what happened, but a reflection of who we are. Yet one of the most important truths about growth is this: failure is an event, not an identity. The problem is that many people struggle to separate the two. When they fail, they do not simply think, "This attempt didn't work." Instead, they begin telling themselves a much more damaging story. "I'm not talented enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not capable enough. Maybe this isn't meant for me." Over time, these thoughts become beliefs, and those beliefs begin shaping future decisions. The failure itself lasts for a moment, but the meaning attached to it can influence an entire lifetime. This is why two people can experience the same setback and emerge with completely different outcomes. One person sees failure as proof that they should stop. The other sees failure as information that can help them improve. The event is identical. The interpretation is different, and that interpretation often determines the future. Every extraordinary achievement is built on a foundation that most people never see. Behind every success story are moments of frustration, disappointment, mistakes, and setbacks. We celebrate victories because they are visible. We rarely witness the years of struggle that made those victories possible. The world often presents success as a finished product, while hiding the process that created it. As a result, many people develop unrealistic expectations. They assume that successful individuals moved smoothly toward their goals while they themselves are uniquely struggling. Nothing could be further from the truth. Success is rarely a straight line. More often, it resembles a winding path filled with obstacles, wrong turns, and unexpected challenges. The individuals who ultimately succeed are not always the most talented. They are often the ones who refuse to let failure define them. Consider the story of an athlete training for a championship. From a distance, people only see the trophy, the celebration, and the achievement. What they do not see are the countless defeats that came before it. They do not see the competitions lost by fractions of a second. They do not see the mistakes made under pressure. They do not see the nights spent questioning whether the effort is worth it. After every defeat, the athlete faces a choice. They can view the loss as evidence that they lack what it takes, or they can view it as feedback. The resilient athlete chooses the second option. Instead of asking, "Why did I fail?" they ask, "What can I learn?" Each loss reveals something useful: a weakness in technique, a gap in preparation, a mindset that needs improvement. Gradually, what once appeared to be failure becomes valuable information. Over time, those weaknesses become strengths. Eventually, the athlete wins the championship. To the outside world, it appears to be a sudden success. In reality, it is the result of lessons accumulated through failure. This pattern exists everywhere. The entrepreneur whose first business fails often learns skills that make the second one successful. The writer whose early work is rejected develops the discipline necessary to create something remarkable. The leader who makes costly mistakes gains wisdom that cannot be learned from books alone. Failure becomes fuel when people stop treating it as a verdict and start treating it as an education. One of the greatest advantages of failure is that it reveals reality. Success can sometimes hide weaknesses because positive outcomes create a false sense of certainty. Failure forces honesty. It shines a light on areas that need attention. It exposes flaws in strategies, habits, and assumptions. While painful in the moment, this honesty is often invaluable. The people who grow the most are not those who avoid failure. They are those who become students of it. They examine their mistakes without allowing those mistakes to destroy their self-worth. They take responsibility without drowning in self-criticism. They learn without becoming trapped in regret. This balance is what resilience looks like. Resilience is not pretending that failure does not hurt. It hurts deeply. Disappointment is real. Frustration is real. Grief is real. Resilience means feeling those emotions without allowing them to permanently stop your progress. It means getting up after a setback and taking another step forward, then another, then another. The truth is that persistence is often more powerful than talent. Talent can provide an advantage, but talent alone cannot overcome discouragement, setbacks, and adversity. Persistence can. History is filled with examples of individuals who achieved extraordinary things not because they were naturally gifted, but because they continued when others quit. They stayed committed during the difficult seasons. They continued learning after mistakes. They refused to let temporary failure become permanent defeat. This is where true transformation occurs. Every challenge you face contains two opportunities. The first is the opportunity to achieve your goal. The second is the opportunity to become stronger through the process. Ironically, the second opportunity often proves more valuable than the first. Goals come and go, achievements fade, but the resilience developed through overcoming adversity stays with you forever. As you continue your journey toward becoming extraordinary, remember that failure is not standing in your way. More often, it is helping prepare the way. The setbacks that frustrate you today may be teaching lessons that become invaluable tomorrow. The disappointment that feels unbearable right now may be building the strength you will need later. Never measure your future by a single failure. Measure it by your willingness to continue. Because extraordinary people are not those who never fall. They are those who rise again with greater wisdom, deeper resilience, and stronger determination than before. And every time you choose to keep going, failure loses a little more of its power and becomes something far more valuable. Fuel for the person you are becoming. Chapter 7. Building Unshakable Confidence. Close your eyes for a moment and think about the most confident person you know. Perhaps it is someone who walks into a room and immediately commands attention. Perhaps it is a leader who remains calm during a crisis, an entrepreneur who takes bold risks, or a speaker who stands in front of thousands of people without appearing nervous. From the outside, confidence often looks effortless. It appears as though certain people were simply born with an inner certainty that others lack. But appearances can be deceiving. What you see today is usually the final chapter of a much longer story. You are seeing the confidence that was built, not the insecurity that existed before it. You are seeing the result of years of effort, mistakes, learning, and growth. You are seeing the visible outcome, not the invisible process. This misunderstanding causes many people to believe confidence is something they either have or do not have. They spend years searching for it, waiting for it, hoping it will arrive one day like a gift. But confidence does not appear suddenly. It is not something that happens to you. It is something you build. And the foundation of true confidence is not talent, intelligence, appearance, or success. It is self-trust. At its core, confidence is the belief that you can rely on yourself. It is the quiet certainty that no matter what challenges appear, you will find a way to respond. It is not the belief that everything will go perfectly. It is the belief that even if things go wrong, you can handle them. This distinction matters because many people chase the wrong kind of confidence. They want confidence that depends on external circumstances. Confidence that exists only when they are winning, succeeding, or receiving approval from others. But that type of confidence is fragile. The moment circumstances change, it disappears. Unshakable confidence comes from somewhere deeper. It comes from knowing that your relationship with yourself remains strong regardless of what happens around you, and that relationship is built through trust. Imagine making a promise to a friend. You tell them you will be there at a certain time, and you arrive exactly when you said you would. You repeat this behavior again and again. Over time, trust develops naturally. Your friend believes your words because your actions consistently support them. The same principle applies to your relationship with yourself. Every time you make a commitment and follow through, you strengthen self-trust. Every time you say you will wake up early and actually do it, self-trust grows. Every time you promise yourself you will exercise, study, practice, or complete an important task, and then follow through, self-trust grows. These moments may seem small, but they are incredibly powerful. They send a message to your subconscious mind. I can depend on myself. Unfortunately, many people unknowingly damage their confidence by repeatedly breaking promises to themselves. They set goals they never pursue. They create plans they never follow. They make commitments they abandon at the first sign of difficulty. Over time, something subtle begins to happen. Their mind stops believing them. Even when they genuinely want to change, a quiet voice emerges and says, "You've said this before." That voice is not negativity. It is a lack of trust. The good news is that trust can always be rebuilt, not through grand promises or dramatic declarations, but through consistent action. Confidence is earned one promise at a time. Another essential component of confidence is emotional control. Many people assume confident individuals never experience fear, anxiety, disappointment, or frustration. In reality, they experience all of those emotions. The difference is that they are not controlled by them. Emotions are like weather patterns. They come and go. Some days are bright and calm, others are stormy and unpredictable. Problems arise when people allow temporary emotions to dictate permanent decisions. A person feels nervous and decides not to speak up. They feel discouraged and abandon their goal. They feel rejected and stop trying. Their emotions become the driver of their life. Emotionally strong individuals take a different approach. They acknowledge what they feel without surrendering control to it. They understand that emotions provide information, but they do not always provide direction. This creates a sense of inner stability. Life becomes less chaotic because their actions are guided by values and purpose rather than temporary feelings. This emotional stability becomes a powerful source of confidence because they know they can trust themselves even during difficult moments. Perhaps one of the greatest confidence killers is the belief that we must feel confident before taking action. But confidence rarely works that way. Think about learning any skill, driving a car, speaking a new language, playing an instrument, public speaking. At the beginning, confidence is low because experience is limited. Every task feels unfamiliar, mistakes happen frequently, self-consciousness is high, but as experience grows, confidence naturally follows. This is why preparation matters so much. Preparation does not eliminate fear, but it reduces uncertainty. The student who studies thoroughly enters the exam room differently than the student who avoided preparation. The athlete who trains consistently approaches competition differently than the athlete who neglected practice. The speaker who rehearses extensively steps onto the stage with a different mindset than the speaker who relies on luck. Preparation creates evidence. Evidence creates belief. Belief creates confidence. This is why confidence is not something you think your way into. It is something you work your way into. Every challenge you face successfully becomes another piece of evidence supporting your self-belief. Every obstacle overcome strengthens your inner foundation. Every difficult conversation handled well reinforces your trust in yourself. Gradually, confidence transforms from something fragile into something resilient. The most remarkable aspect of confidence is that it compounds over time. Small victories create greater self-belief. Greater self-belief encourages bigger actions. Bigger actions create larger victories. The cycle continues, building momentum with every step. Eventually, you reach a point where confidence is no longer dependent on outcomes. You stop needing constant proof from the outside world. You stop requiring everyone's approval. You stop measuring your worth by every success or failure. Instead, you develop something far more valuable. You develop faith in your ability to handle life. You trust yourself to learn when necessary. You trust yourself to adapt when circumstances change. You trust yourself to recover when setbacks occur. You trust yourself to continue moving forward, even when the path is unclear. That is what unshakable confidence truly looks like. It is not loud. It is not arrogant. It is not the absence of fear. It is a quiet strength that comes from knowing who you are and trusting who you are becoming. And once that foundation is built, very little in the external world can take it away. Because true confidence was never meant to come from the world around you. It was always meant to be built within you. Chapter 8. The Habits of Extraordinary People. Imagine watching two people over the course of a single day. The first person wakes up, scrolls through their phone for an hour, postpones important tasks, makes decisions based on convenience, and promises themselves they will be more productive tomorrow. The second person wakes up and spends 30 minutes working on a meaningful goal. They read a few pages of a book, exercise briefly, complete an important task, and take one small step toward the future they want to create. At the end of that day, there is almost no visible difference between them. A week later, there is still little difference. Even a month later, the gap may seem insignificant. But what about 5 years later? This is where one of the most powerful truths about success reveals itself. Extraordinary lives are rarely built through dramatic moments. More often, they are built through ordinary actions repeated consistently over time. What people do occasionally matters, but what they do daily shapes the direction of their lives. Many people spend years searching for life-changing breakthroughs. They wait for the perfect opportunity, the perfect strategy, or the perfect moment that will suddenly transform everything. Yet the reality is far less dramatic and far more empowering. The future is usually determined by habits. Habits are the small behaviors we repeat so often that they become automatic. Because they feel ordinary, we often underestimate their importance. We focus on major decisions while ignoring the daily actions that quietly influence our future. However, habits are constantly working in the background, shaping our health, mindset, confidence, relationships, finances, and personal growth. The remarkable thing about habits is that they do not simply create results, they create identity. Every action sends a message to the mind about who we are. When you exercise consistently, you begin seeing yourself as someone who values health. When you read every day, you begin seeing yourself as someone who learns and grows. When you keep your promises, you begin seeing yourself as someone who is disciplined and reliable. Over time, these repeated actions become evidence. That evidence gradually transforms self-perception. Eventually, behavior and identity begin reinforcing one another. This is why extraordinary people focus so much on daily disciplines. They understand that success is not an event, it is a process. Unfortunately, many people rely too heavily on motivation. They wait until they feel inspired before taking action. When enthusiasm is high, they work hard. When enthusiasm fades, progress stops. The problem is that motivation is unpredictable. Some days you feel energized and focused. Other days you feel tired, discouraged, or distracted. If your progress depends entirely on motivation, your results will always be inconsistent. Discipline operates differently. Discipline is the ability to continue even when motivation disappears. It is choosing what matters most over what feels easiest in the moment. It is showing up on difficult days, not because you feel like it, but because you have made a commitment to yourself. This is one of the defining characteristics of extraordinary people. They understand that feelings are temporary, but habits have lasting consequences. A musician practices when inspiration is absent. An athlete trains when motivation is low. A writer writes even when creativity feels distant. Their success is not built on occasional bursts of effort. It is built on consistency. Consider a writer who dreams of publishing a book. The dream feels exciting, but the task itself appears overwhelming. Hundreds of pages, thousands of words, months or even years of work. Faced with such a large goal, many people become intimidated and never begin. But imagine that this writer makes a simple commitment. Write 500 words every day. 500 words is not extraordinary. It does not require genius. It does not require perfect conditions. It simply requires consistency. One day becomes 1 week. 1 week becomes 1 month. 1 month becomes 1 year. Eventually, those small daily efforts accumulate into multiple completed books. From the outside, people may admire the final achievement and assume the writer possesses exceptional talent or discipline. What they often fail to see is that the achievement was built one ordinary day at a time. This is the power of compounding. Small actions may appear insignificant in isolation, but they accumulate over time. Just as small financial investments can grow into substantial wealth, small daily habits can create extraordinary results. A 10-minute workout may not transform your body today. Reading 10 pages may not transform your mind today. Practicing a skill for 30 minutes may not transform your future today. But repeated consistently over months and years, these actions become powerful. The challenge is that compounding works in both directions. Positive habits create positive outcomes. Negative habits create negative outcomes. Just as small improvements can gradually elevate your life, small acts of neglect can gradually diminish it. This is why seemingly insignificant choices deserve attention. Every day you are either strengthening habits that support your future or reinforcing habits that limit it. The extraordinary people we admire are not necessarily those with the greatest natural gifts. More often, they are individuals who mastered the art of consistency. They learned how to keep moving forward when progress seemed invisible. They trusted the process even when results were delayed. This requires patience because habits rarely provide immediate rewards. In the beginning, effort often appears disconnected from outcomes. You work hard, yet little seems to change. You stay disciplined, yet progress feels slow. Many people quit during this stage. Extraordinary people continue. They understand that growth is often occurring beneath the surface long before it becomes visible. They know that every repetition matters, even when no one notices. Eventually the results arrive, not because of one extraordinary day, but because of hundreds of ordinary days linked together by consistency. As you continue your journey toward becoming fearless, remember that your life is being shaped right now by the habits you practice repeatedly. Every small action is a vote for the person you are becoming. Every disciplined choice strengthens your future identity. Extraordinary people are not defined by occasional moments of greatness. They are defined by the habits they refuse to abandon. And when those habits are aligned with purpose, growth and discipline, ordinary days gradually create an extraordinary life. Chapter 9. Creating an Extraordinary Identity. Imagine waking up tomorrow with absolute certainty about who you are. Not what you hope to become someday, not what others expect you to be, but who you genuinely believe yourself to be at your core. Imagine looking at challenges without immediately questioning your abilities. Imagine pursuing meaningful goals without constantly battling the belief that you are somehow unqualified, incapable, or destined to remain the same person you have always been. Most people spend their lives trying to change their results without ever changing their identity. They focus on external achievements, believing that success will eventually transform how they see themselves. They tell themselves that once they lose the weight, earn the promotion, build the business, write the book, or achieve the goal, they will finally become confident, disciplined, successful, or worthy. But life rarely works that way. External achievements can certainly create moments of satisfaction, but lasting transformation occurs much deeper. The most powerful changes happen when a person begins to see themselves differently. Identity shapes behavior far more than motivation ever will. While goals can inspire action, identity sustains it. Goals are temporary destinations. Identity becomes a permanent part of who you are. This is why so many people struggle to maintain positive changes. They may successfully change their behavior for a short period, but eventually they return to old patterns because their self-image remains unchanged. Someone may commit to exercising for a few weeks, but if they still see themselves as an unhealthy person trying to work out, the habit often fades. Another person may attempt to build confidence, but if they continue to identify as insecure, their actions will eventually reflect that belief. Human beings have a remarkable tendency to act in ways that remain consistent with their identity. Whether that identity is empowering or limiting, the mind constantly works to protect it. If you believe you are disciplined, you naturally seek behaviors that support that belief. If you believe you are unreliable, you often unconsciously reinforce that story through your actions. This process happens quietly, often without conscious awareness, yet it influences nearly every decision you make. Consider how often people describe themselves with absolute certainty. They say things like, "I'm not good at public speaking," "I've never been confident," "I'm not a leader," or "I'm just not disciplined." These statements may seem harmless, but they are powerful because they become part of a person's identity. Once an identity takes root, the mind begins searching for evidence to support it. Every mistake becomes proof. Every setback becomes confirmation. Every challenge becomes another reason to remain the same. Extraordinary people are not immune to this process. The difference is that they learn how to consciously shape their identity instead of allowing old experiences to define it. They understand that identity is not something fixed at birth. It is something built through repeated experiences, beliefs, and decisions. They recognize that becoming extraordinary begins long before visible success appears. It begins with a shift in self-perception. Think about the person you want to become. Perhaps you want to become courageous, disciplined, confident, resilient, or successful. Most people approach this desire by asking, "What do I need to do?" While that question is important, an even more powerful question is, "Who do I need to become?" The answer changes everything, because it moves the focus away from isolated actions and toward personal transformation. When someone decides to become a writer, for example, their identity begins to change. Instead of merely trying to write occasionally, they start seeing themselves as a writer. This subtle shift influences behavior. Writers write, even when inspiration is absent. Athletes train, even when motivation is low. Leaders take responsibility, even when circumstances are difficult. Identity creates consistency because actions become expressions of who a person believes they are. This does not mean pretending to be someone you are not. Authentic identity is not built through wishful thinking or empty affirmations. It is built through evidence. Every small action becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you reinforce a stronger identity. Every time you choose courage over avoidance, you strengthen the belief that you are courageous. Every time you act with discipline, you provide evidence that discipline is part of your character. At first, these changes may feel uncomfortable. The old identity often resists transformation because familiarity feels safe. A person who has spent years doubting themselves may find confidence unfamiliar. Someone who has always avoided risks may feel uncomfortable acting courageously. Yet discomfort is often a sign that growth is occurring. It indicates that the boundaries of identity are expanding. Over time, these small acts accumulate. The evidence grows stronger. The old story begins to lose its power. Gradually, a new identity emerges, not because it was forced, but because it was earned. Confidence becomes natural because confidence has been practiced. Discipline becomes normal because discipline has been repeated. Courage becomes familiar because courage has been chosen again and again. The most inspiring aspect of identity transformation is that it remains available to everyone. It does not depend on talent, background, age, or circumstance. It begins with a decision to stop allowing the past to dictate the future. The person you have been does not have to determine the person you become. Your previous mistakes do not define your potential. Your past limitations do not establish permanent boundaries. Extraordinary people are not born with extraordinary identities. They create them. They intentionally choose beliefs that support growth, reinforce those beliefs through action, and gradually become living proof of what is possible. Their transformation does not happen overnight, but through thousands of small decisions that align with the person they aspire to become. As you continue this journey, remember that every action is shaping your identity, whether you realize it or not. The question is not whether an identity is being formed. The question is whether you are consciously creating it. The extraordinary life you seek begins the moment you stop asking whether you are capable and start building the identity of someone who knows they are. Because lasting change is never just about changing what you do, it is about changing who you believe you are. Chapter 10. Living fearlessly every day. There is a common belief that one day, if we work hard enough, grow enough, and become strong enough, we will finally arrive at a place where fear no longer exists. A place where confidence is permanent, where uncertainty disappears, where challenges stop appearing, where every decision feels easy. It is a comforting idea. It is also an illusion. The truth is that fearlessness is not a destination. It is not a finish line waiting somewhere in the future. It is not a permanent state achieved by a lucky few. Fearlessness is a practice. It is a way of living. It is a decision that must be renewed again and again throughout life. The extraordinary people we admire did not reach a point where fear vanished forever. They simply learned how to walk forward despite its presence, and that is perhaps the most important lesson in this entire journey. Fear will continue to visit you. New challenges will create new uncertainties. New opportunities will introduce new risks. New dreams will require new levels of courage. The goal is not to eliminate fear from your life. The goal is to stop allowing it to determine the direction of your life. As you reflect on everything you have learned throughout this audiobook, a pattern begins to emerge. Fear limited your potential when it silently controlled your decisions. Understanding fear changed your relationship with it. Overcoming self-doubt weakened its influence. Taking action created confidence. Stepping beyond your comfort zone expanded your possibilities. Learning from failure strengthened resilience. Building confidence developed self-trust. Creating powerful habits transformed your daily behavior. Shifting your identity reshaped how you saw yourself. Each lesson contributed to a larger transformation, not the transformation of circumstances alone, the transformation of character, because extraordinary lives are ultimately built from extraordinary character, and character is formed through daily choices. Many people imagine courage as something dramatic. They picture heroic acts, major risks, and life-changing decisions. Certainly, those moments matter, but most courage is far less visible. It appears in ordinary moments. The decision to have an honest conversation, the willingness to admit a mistake, the commitment to continue after disappointment, the discipline to show up when motivation disappears, the choice to try again after failure. These moments rarely receive recognition from others, yet they shape who you become. Living fearlessly is not about making one courageous decision. It is about making courageous decisions consistently, one day at a time, one moment at a time, one choice at a time. This is where purpose becomes essential. Without purpose, courage eventually loses direction. Imagine a ship with incredible strength but no destination. No matter how powerful the vessel may be, it will drift aimlessly without a clear course. Human beings are no different. Purpose gives meaning to effort. It gives direction to courage. It provides a reason to continue when circumstances become difficult. When your purpose is strong enough, obstacles become easier to endure. The parent sacrifices comfort because they care deeply about their family. The entrepreneur perseveres through setbacks because they believe in their vision. The athlete endures years of training because the goal matters more than temporary discomfort. Purpose transforms hardship. It changes the question from "How can I avoid difficulty?" to "What is this difficulty helping me achieve?" This shift creates remarkable resilience, because people can endure incredible challenges when those challenges serve something meaningful. As you move through life, challenges will never completely disappear. This is not a pessimistic truth. It is a liberating one. Many people spend years waiting for a problem-free life before allowing themselves to feel happy, confident, or fulfilled. They believe peace exists somewhere beyond struggle. But life is not designed that way. Every stage of growth introduces new challenges. Every new level of success creates new responsibilities. Every meaningful goal brings new obstacles. The extraordinary person is not someone who avoids these realities. The extraordinary person learns how to respond differently to them. When setbacks occur, they adapt. When fear appears, they act anyway. When uncertainty arises, they move forward despite incomplete information. When failure arrives, they learn rather than surrender. Their circumstances may not be easier than everyone else's. Their response is simply stronger. This is one of the greatest transformations that can occur within a human being. At the beginning of the journey, fear controls behavior. At the end of the journey, values control behavior. The difference is profound. Fear asks, "What if things go wrong?" Purpose asks, "What matters most?" Fear asks, "How can I stay comfortable?" Growth asks, "Who can I become?" Fear asks, "What if I fail?" Courage asks, "What if I succeed?" Over time, these new questions create a new life. A meaningful life is not built through comfort alone. Comfort has its place. Rest is important. Stability matters. But meaning often emerges from growth, from contribution, from challenge, from becoming more than you were yesterday. Human beings are designed to evolve. There is something deep within us that longs to learn, create, improve, and expand. When we ignore that desire, life often feels smaller than it should. But when we honor it, something extraordinary happens. We begin experiencing life more fully. We become more present, more courageous, more resilient, more alive. The remarkable thing about fearlessness is that it eventually stops feeling like an act and starts feeling like a way of being. The courageous decisions that once seemed impossible become natural. The risks that once felt overwhelming become manageable. The challenges that once created panic become opportunities for growth. Not because life becomes easier, because you become stronger. And strength changes everything. As this journey comes to an end, remember that the goal was never perfection. You do not need to be fearless every moment of every day. You do not need to eliminate every doubt or conquer every fear immediately. You simply need to continue choosing growth over comfort, action over hesitation, purpose over fear, again and again. Because fearlessness is not built through one extraordinary moment. It is built through thousands of ordinary moments when you decide not to let fear make your decisions. Every day offers that opportunity. Every challenge presents that choice. Every dream invites that courage. The extraordinary life you seek is not waiting in some distant future. It is being created right now through the decisions you make today. And as long as you continue moving forward with courage, purpose and determination, you will never stop becoming the person you were meant to be. That is what it means to live fearlessly. And that is how ordinary people become extraordinary. As we reach the end of this journey, it is important to remember one simple truth. Extraordinary people are not a different species. They are not born with special powers, unlimited confidence, or a life free from fear. They are ordinary people who repeatedly make an extraordinary choice, the choice to move forward despite fear. Throughout this audiobook, you have discovered that fear is not your enemy. It is a natural part of being human. The goal was never to eliminate fear completely. The goal was to stop allowing fear to decide what your life can become. Fear may still appear when opportunities arise, when risks must be taken, or when uncertainty stands in front of you. But it no longer needs to control your decisions. Every day, you are shaping your future through the choices you make. Every action strengthens an identity. Every habit builds a character. Every courageous step, no matter how small, becomes evidence of the person you are becoming. The life you ultimately create will not be determined by a single moment of greatness, but by countless moments when you choose growth over comfort and action over hesitation. The future has always belonged to those who are willing to act before certainty arrives. It belongs to those who continue learning after failure, who keep moving after setbacks, and who refuse to let self-doubt define their limits. So as you leave these pages behind, remember this: the extraordinary person you have been searching for is not somewhere outside of you. That person has been within you all along. Your extraordinary journey does not begin tomorrow. It begins the moment you stop waiting, trust yourself, and take the next step forward.